It is the UGA Sports Postgame Overreaction Show. I'm Dayne Young, joined by Jason Butt, filling in for Paul Meharry today. Do you know what he's doing, Jason? Did he tell you?
No, he did not tell me.
I think he's going to see Shane Gillis. So that just tells me that Shane Gillis is funnier than you are, to Paul at least.
That's he is funnier than me. So I mean,
Okay, so Paul's right.
I was trying to come up with something witty and nothing came to mind because it wouldn't be true. I mean, Shane Gillis is really funny.
So Georgia beats Tennessee Tech 48-3. Do we start with the field goal at the end? Is that where we need to begin, or do we just need to talk about what Georgia did before that?
Maybe what Georgia did before. I mean, I don't care that they got the field goal at the end. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It was against the second, third team, and good for them. They got some points. Out, and that's something that Kirby can actually lament to those guys. They ruined the shutout for the starters. So I think that's more than anything. I think Kirby can take from it and help coach those guys.
2 games into the season, Georgia's defense has still yet to give up a touchdown. And we'll take that streak up to Kentucky next week. And I'll have an eye over here on the TV to my left as Kentucky and South Carolina are at halftime. South Carolina currently leading that game. Stats for Georgia against Tennessee Tech. Georgia with 498 total yards. Carson Beck, 18 of 25 for 242 yards and 5 touchdowns. Gunnar Stockton was 10 out of 12 for 90 yards. Rushing-wise, it was Trevor Etienne making his debut for Georgia, 5 carries for 78 yards. Nate Frazier did have 6 carries for 28 yards. Branson Robinson, Jason, I thought looked much more confident, much more like the Branson that we'd seen a little bit pre-injury. He did have the 3 carries for 22 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, Branson, I thought did a great job. Really, all the running backs that stepped in. I'm sorry, I'm getting this echo. Is everything coming in okay on your end?
Let's see. Yeah, I'm hearing great, but you may be hearing echo from my side. Are you hearing yourself?
Yeah, I'm hearing myself.
That may be my fault with this board over here. You know what? I can fix that. You do your thing.
All right. What about now? Ooh, much better.
Talk.
All right. So back to running backs. Branson Robinson. I thought that was good for him because last week all the attention was on Nate Frazier, which deservedly so. I think when you have a game like that as a true freshman, that's going to be the talk of the town. So for Branson to have a showing like he did, that was good. Trevor Etienne, though, showed why he's the number one guy. That said, I mean, I'm really excited. Hopefully Nate Frazier's injury isn't anything that's going to caused him to miss the Kentucky game. I know he had the shoulder injury late, but I think down the road as the season goes on, it's going to be a 1-2 punch of Etienne and Frazier. I just think Frazier's too much of a talent. But Branson Robinson had some tough runs there, had the touchdown. I feel bad for him in a sense that he's had to deal with the injuries and hasn't really been able to show why he was the number one running back coming out of his class. But it's just Georgia's backfield. It's stacked per usual.
Let me tell you what happened and why the echo happened is I had your audio running through the soundboard that we do for the watch-along show. And so
okay.
Echo should be better now, at least on your end.
Yeah, sure. It looks like in the comments people are saying it's better now. So
all right, cool. Thank you, Barry. Thanks, Gary. If y'all want to hop in here, come chat with us. We're going to be talking dogs here for a little bit. In fact, Heath Fox, let's bring him in. Heath, welcome to the Postgame Overreaction Show. Are we overreacting to anything with Tennessee Tech? Are you upset about the field goal, or is this just Georgia did what it needed to do?
Georgia did what it needed to do, and I think everybody knew coming into this game that it was not about winning the ball game. I think everybody knew kind of what was going to happen. We all kind of knew Carson Beck was going to come in and throw a couple touchdowns against this Tennessee Tech team. I think this game kind of shows everybody how much depth we have. We have so much, even in the running backs. You go down to Bowens, he did really well today. Frazier did, really good. And he's still, like you guys said, Etienne's the man right now. Etienne's our guy. He's our starting running back. But if you look at stats, statistically, they handed the ball more to Frazier today than any other running back. and I think we're trying to see what Frazier can do for us down the road, even, you know. But today he did great. ET did great. Beck did great. I don't know what happened with Oscar Delp. Did you guys get an update on his injury?
It's an ankle, but I'm sure it's interesting though, because when he came out right when whose touchdown was it? He was seen celebrating for the touchdown. Like he had come back right. So I doubt it's going to be anything terribly serious. You hope he's back for Alabama at least. I think they're fine in the tight end room against Kentucky.
I'm sure Kirby Smart will be asked about it shortly to see what he says on that. So we'll go from there. Otherwise, Heath, what did you think about Georgia getting more players involved? Were there any young guys that stood out to you?
There was a couple guys I can't remember all by name. A couple wide receivers that I like seeing in there. Obviously, 2 freshman running backs. Love seeing those guys in there. Even in defense, we've seen a couple youngsters coming in on defense, and like I said, can't remember all the names, but I really like seeing what we have and how much depth we do have for down the road. And even if somebody goes down, you know, we got a guy that steps right in, and I think we did real well today. We'll see how Kentucky goes. We got 2 road games back to back coming up here, and we're not back in Sanford until October against Auburn. Yeah. So we got all of September left to play road games, and they're not very they're not very easy teams either. So you hope to go in there and get 1 from Kentucky, get 1 from Bama, and come back into Sanford and beat Auburn. And then so I think if we can stay healthy, I think we got a good team, and I think we can make a great run this year. But other than that, man, I think it's good. I think we look good. So, like I said, if we can stay healthy. So,
sneaking some comments here. Kimberly Johnson, loving the Dogs from Romulus, Michigan. Peggy Couch saying it was a great game. Kirby probably wanted to be a shutout, but the other team had to get a few points on the board. You know, I'm sure they did want the shutout. You could see the intensity raised there at the end when Tennessee Tech calls that timeout. Goat Dog mentions that Kyron Jones is a missile, and I had the same reaction watching it in the final few minutes there of just some of what Georgia was doing on defense with some of those young guys. Jason, overall, was there anything you can glean from this team going into a road SEC game next week? I know the first half of Kentucky doesn't look like anything overly imposing, but historically, during Kirby Smart's era, Kentucky at least plays Georgia tougher than some other SEC opponents.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything you can really take away from a game like this. I mean, Heath hit it right on the head. I mean, they did what they were supposed to do. The fast start was very impressive. I mean, you know, last year against teams like this, they kind of had they were slow. They were just seemed like they were asleep, not really up for the game. I think there was a message sent, hey, get on these guys early. They did, and then they kind of dialed it back a little bit after the 14-0 quick start. But I think the thing is you want to just be as healthy as possible. So obviously 2 injuries. You hope they're not that serious. But otherwise, you know, fairly clean. They'll be pretty close to the full strength against Kentucky. And you're right about that. Mark Stoops, you know, it's one of those things where Mark Stoops isn't as good of a coach as Kirby Smart. He's not ever going to have a team as good as Georgia's going to have. But he's a good enough coach with enough physical players that brand of football really seems to give Georgia fits, and especially defensively up front. I don't know if Kentucky's going to be able to move the ball on Georgia, and obviously they're familiar with the quarterback, and he was just there last year at Georgia, and so you know, Georgia has that going for them. But defensively, they tend to cause Georgia some problems. So you wonder, you wonder if some of that can creep in this game, but otherwise, I look for Georgia's defense to have a standout game and really send a message to the conference next week against Kentucky.
The way I kind of talk about Kentucky and Georgia in recent years is Kentucky doesn't really get blown out by Georgia. You don't see the 30-point victories.
Oh, yeah.
But it always feels like Georgia's 13 points ahead of Kentucky. Like they're never within striking distance to make you overly nervous.
It's a fourth quarter game usually where it's like they're not pulling away. They're not pulling away. They're not pulling the starters, but you're comfortably enough ahead to feel good about things.
And this goes all the way back. Even we're known to have a great defense. I mean, we played a top 25 team now, Clemson last week. They didn't put much up. We held Tennessee Tech to basically 0 until the end. They had a score on their, last string. So, it is what it is. But this defense has reminded me of the past defenses that we've had in the past couple of years. We always have dominated on that side of the ball. So I think, with this defense that we have now, I think there's, it's a reputation that we hold very highly is a good defense. 0 points, very minimum scoring from other teams. And I think that Georgia will walk into Kentucky and hold on to at least 14, no more than that. And that's what I'm confident in that. So we'll see how we do in Bama. I think that will be a shootout more so. But I think next week we walk into Kentucky and beat them by 21. So
Heath, is there anything else in college football that's on your brain that you wanted to discuss, maybe outside of Georgia before we get you out of here?
Well, there's one game that I've thought about this entire year, and it's Georgia versus Texas at Texas. I think this is a big game for us, knowing that they just beat number 10 Michigan in the Big House. I think that is the team that we might play in the SEC championship this year in Atlanta. That is a team that looks good. They are a very well-coached team. They have many weapons on each side of the ball. Even with CJ, I think it's CJ Baxter, even with his injury, season-ending injury, they got Blue. They've got many weapons that can kill you deep. But that is the game that I have looked at on my schedule all year, because that is a big ball game, and seeing how much Georgia defense and offensively can handle being there and playing against the number 3 team.
That game could be 1-2 when it comes down to if Georgia gets past Bama and Texas gets past Oklahoma. You look at a possible 1-2 showdown, biggest game of the season. I think, that one's looking like a pretty intense matchup, just in terms of the grand scheme of college football.
Yep, and it honestly helps us.
Oh, for sure.
Kentucky just forced back-to-back fumbles against South Carolina. On the first one, the ball bounced right into South Carolina's running back's hands, and he ran it for probably a better gain than the play was going to be. Second one, they forced it, and it looks like, South Carolina pounced right back on it. But that's 2 straight times that Kentucky's gotten the Sellers and forced fumbles, and they didn't get the ball.
Oh, that's brutal.
That's one team I wish we were playing this year, just because I'm still bitter about them picking our hedges back in 2019. That's one team I missed that we're going to play this year. But I appreciate you don't forget. No. I keep receipts.
That's awesome.
Well, hey, Heath, thanks for jumping in here, chatting with us. Feel free to join up later in the show if you see a spot to get in here. Appreciate you, buddy.
Perfect. Appreciate you guys. You guys have a great week.
Yeah, you too.
Awesome of Heath to jump in here early on. I think Texas put a lot of people on notice by going into that stadium. Look, I know Michigan's not what it was last season,
right,
but it really is the test of the maturity of a team, of how do you go handle that being the primetime game of the day. And that was never close. I mean, Texas was fantastic.
Yeah, and they did what they were. I think they had those expectations. I think people like me, I thought Michigan would keep it a little closer, that Texas would win by, somewhere between 10 and 14. I didn't expect just a total beatdown. And Michigan lost their great quarterback, their head coach, who, is a great coach. I mean, say what you will about him as a person, he's still a great football coach. They've done a lot of good. Harbaugh did a lot to kind of bring that program back to prominence, and then of course win a national championship. And so to see them take this kind of a step back against elite programs, it's a little surprising, but just the way they lost, you expected them to be a little more competitive, but it's 31-6 in the second half, and it's it's over, and that's just kind of the way it was.
Dawg 85 says it'll be different against Kentucky this year because not playing on an iceberg. Yeah, I think one of the last times up in Lexington was very, very cold.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It will not be that way playing earlier into the season. Philip Fountain also impressed by Kyron Jones being physical, attacking the ball toward the end of the game. And I do want to bring up just the stat sheet and give a little love to defense here. Georgia's leading tackler in this game, C.J. Allen with 5 total tackles, Christian Miller with 4, and the sack, tackle for loss. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, 3 tackles for loss, and you could really see his presence emerge early in this game. Seeing him healthy, Jason, really it has to be encouraging to Georgia fans just for the depth that defensive line, some of the different guys you can plug and play, especially when you get a Jordan Hall back potentially. Just if you start to forecast ahead to what could this team be when you're in the really heart of a potential championship run, and Ingram-Dawkins is right in the mix there.
Yeah, and he was a guy I think early on people were wondering when he was going to break out, and he did a little bit last year, and at least came on as somebody who could contribute. And O-line and D-line, I mean, it's kind of the old thing in football. It never fails. That's where you want to have your best depth. I mean, you want to be able to control the line of scrimmage and control the trenches. And so having Ingram-Dawkins, obviously it's Tennessee Tech, so you expect players to have games like that. 3 tackles for loss. Being a presence in the backfield pretty often. You want that out of him in games like this. You expect that. But I think that, like you said, the box score shows that if he's somebody that, as Georgia gets healthier up front, if he can rotate and spell guys and can really be a major part of that 2 deep, then on the defensive line, at least, because they love rotating guys. Trey Scott's rotating guys like crazy up there. And so, if he can continue to contribute like that, this is going to be a significant group moving forward. And you never know when guys will get hurt, and somebody like Ingram-Dawkins will have to play more. And I thought, Christian Miller's sack, I thought, I was good to see, a young guy get out there and make a play early in the game. And so you like seeing that out of your guys up front.
Good to see Jonel Aguero back for Georgia after he missed the Clemson game. Michael Williams did not play in this game. That was expected after just the minor injury he had last week. Every injury is minor when it's not you, right? Chris Brown checking in from Statham, 30666, the worst zip code in the country. I'll tell you this, Chris.
Yeah.
When I moved back up toward the Athens area after working in local TV, we first bought a house in Bethlehem, Georgia. And so, of course, you have all the biblical ties to that. We then moved to a house in Statham. So we went from Bethlehem to 30666. And
you don't get much different than that.
No. So we were at the polar ends of the spectrum. We moved one to more in the house that we're in now. Shout out Beauregard, Georgia. North Oconee looked good last night. Georgia commit Landon Roland, 5 touchdowns for North Oconee last night. Let's get to some more comments in here. Gary saying, Dayne, do you need some spice to the show? Is that a threat, Gary, is my question. Wait for Radi to come in, because I think I need Radi as my sidekick on that one. But you're always welcome. KC says Georgia needs more sacks. I mean, not in this game.
It didn't matter. Yeah. And also, I mean, how many times did they throw the ball? It really didn't. The Potts went 5 of 8. Didn't have many opportunities to get sacks.
Who among the young offensive players, Jason, was there anyone that you were just eager to see? If it was, I've seen some people talk about, good to see Nitro Tugwell get in there. Offensively, just Georgia was able to play a lot of guys in this game. To me, some of the offensive linemen, you just kind of look at the future and say, they're fine. They're fine at that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, man. To me, I'm just dying for Anthony Evans to. I mean, not a freshman, obviously, but sophomore who got a little playing time, and obviously a special teams. First of all, his punt return was tremendous, setting up that first touchdown. But he's a guy that I've just, I love the speed. So maybe he's my Arian Smith now, where everybody was wanting Arian Smith to come along. And now you're seeing that a little bit out of him, late in his career. I mean, 4 catches, 73 today. But, with the 50-yard bomb. But I'm just looking for Evans to have that moment. I love that kid's game, and so I think if I had to choose anybody on offense, it would be him. I mean, because I'm not going to choose Frazier. I mean, obviously, we all want to see more Frazier.
Omari Carmichael says you can't have more sacks if they run the ball 90% of the time. That's true. And ran it better than Clemson, I might say.
Yeah, I mean, and granted, they ran it better with the second team in the game. They didn't get much going at all in the first half. I think they were at something like less than 20 total yards at one point in the first half. I think it was. I wish I had the first half. Where they ended in the first half. I can't remember what that number was, but I just remember. I remember Beck starting 11 of 11, and thinking that's pretty crazy. And then also just nothing for Tennessee Tech until the backups came in.
Unc Wilson, this is an overreaction. Soon enough, Beck is going to be exposed. Texas, Bama, even Ole Miss, going to send everything back there.
He's
faced pressure before, and he's
70-something% against the blitz, or he was last year against the blitz. I think it was 71 or 72% completion. You can argue he didn't play his best game against Bama last year, but against Ole Miss, yeah, I mean, he's been pretty productive against some pretty good teams. Texas, we'll see. Texas is, I think of those three, the big three that they play, Texas is probably the best opponent, at least that we've seen so far.
Yeah, I think it's hard to assess what Alabama is right now. Last year when Alabama played South Florida, struggled mightily. I probably should have lost that game.
Nobody thought that they would be a playoff team after that game.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to be the case today. I think they're going to handle South Florida, but I don't think we're going to learn anything about Alabama from that game moving forward. Right. I do know that one of the most prolific ball carriers in the country is Jalen Milroe, and that's always something that's going to be scary if he's moving the ball forward against your defense. Now, his passing accuracy, I think that leaves something to be desired, and you probably are more scared of Quinn Ewers in that situation. But, man, if I've got Georgia's defense, I'm not very scared of anybody, just because Georgia's linebacker core is right there with the best units in the country.
Yeah, just don't double spy like they did against Milroe in the first half last year of the SEC championship. I think after a couple drives that started to kill them, and so Milroe's dangerous as a runner. He's gonna get his plays, but I think hopefully for this staff they've learned from the mistakes of maybe worrying too much about him as a run threat last year. They were just daring him to pass, and he ended up making them pay, in the second half. And so hopefully, and tell you what, I mean, what we've seen of Georgia, at least against, granted it's Clemson, it's a team, last week on this show, I fully mentioned that I don't see them being a threat in the ACC, which is wild because the ACC isn't that deep. Not really strong offense, outside of the D line, not that strong, and then offensively they're not that great, and so and so I don't want to get ahead of myself about Georgia's defense being something that just going to be able to shut out Bama or keep them out of the end zone. I expect Bama to score when that game comes in 3 weeks, but at the same time, you would think that you would see a better showing, this year to last year, especially with what we've seen from Georgia so far. And Georgia's strength, it seems to be pretty strong in the secondary right now. I love their safety play, and Starks is elite and an NFL potential first rounder, and then of course we're getting Aguero back's great, and then Dan Jackson just steady Dan. You love his story and what he brings, and I think the secondaries they've kind of come along and look better maybe than I anticipated. I thought it could be the weaker link of the defense, and so far I don't think that right now.
Bringing the boss man, Radi Nabulsi. Jason, I don't know if you have I really don't know game day obligations because Paul normally handles this, and I'm usually driving home from the postgame show. So if you have other things you have to do.
So as you said that, I just checked, and Brent's first story is published, so I guess I better log off.
So did I do better or worse than Paul? Because this is really going to be
That's a low
I'm
bar.
pretty fragile.
No, I'm not playing that game.
Yeah, no,
I'm not doing
you
that.
have to. You need to play that
I'm Switzerland. I'm impartial. I like everybody.
Dude, Jason, you would have asked Kirby Smart, Mark Richt, any of those coaches, who did better, who did best. You did it. You covered you covered the Falcons forever, and you're like, blank. Let me ask you about this coach versus that coach. Come on.
In that role, but I know how the game's played on the other side too.
Hey, does Paul send you the same funny text every August?
No, does he have the video?
No.
Okay.
You're one of the only people that know about that video, Jason.
Okay, no, and we're gonna keep it that way.
I don't think Radi knows about that video.
I'm kind of scared.
This kind of went off the rails in terms of a video. But on that note, everybody.
If Georgia wins the national championship, I'll play the video.
Okay. Oh, I love it. If they win the national championship, it's going.
It'll be all good vibes.
Yep.
Then I can play the video.
Perfect.
It better not be from New Orleans. That's all I know.
Oh, no. It's nothing like that.
Appreciate you, Jason.
All right. Y'all take care.
Roddy, I do want to get to your thoughts, but Junior Jones has been waiting in the wings here. And I'm
bring on Junior. I'm putting a note on Oscar Delp on the board anyway. So
okay, look at you working. A little news over at UGAsports.com. Junior Jones in the house. What's up, Junior?
Hey, can you hear me?
We got you.
All right.
Was there anything to overreact from in Georgia's win over Tennessee Tech that resulted in this random field goal at the end?
See, this is like the definition of overreaction because it's Tennessee Tech. So, watching the game, our run defense, I don't know. Like, there's multiple plays to where it's just like miss open tackles, just over pursuing. And I'm just like, come on, guys. Like, multiple times where we had the guy in the back and like in the backfield and just cannot complete the play. So that's like my major overreaction. But also, I think we have one of the best running back rooms, period, this year. In terms of depth, like we don't have like an exceptional running back, but just in terms of depth and quality, I think we have the best running back room that there is right now.
Hey, ETN may be exceptional.
Yeah.
I think Branson may be too. And maybe Nate.
We are deep at the running back.
You're right, Junior. I don't want to step on your line there, but do you understand, or just think about this? Trevor's first game, he had 5 touches, 15.6 yards a carry. I know it's against Tennessee.
Wow.
But if you're averaging 15 yards a touch against anybody, first time between the hedges, that ain't a bad day, my friend.
Yeah,
I'm agreeing with you, but I'm saying that maybe even as much praise you're putting on them, we can go up a little bit.
I need a little bit more.
15.6 yards a carry. Again, Tennessee Tech, I need to back off, get going here, but damn, that's good. I wish he would have been available last week. Wish he hadn't made a mistake. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what he does against Kentucky. I'm with you there. Hey, like you said, if he doesn't have the hot hand, you got 5 more guys.
We are deep. We are deep. That's like even like this game. Like in the first quarter, I was like, okay, give him the ball, because like I want to see him work with Georgia and see if he's able to recreate what he did last year or even get better. And it was a great pickup that we got. It was a great, like I love our running back room. And also depth. I like depth too. I know, at the tight end position, it's, once you come from Brock Bowers, then what you're going to do. But I think depth is a really, really good tight end in terms of blocking and receiving. He just, like all around, he's a solid tight end. So I think we're good this year.
And bringing in Jurasic, you saw him have a couple key blocks in this game early on. I don't think he's going to be a game-changing superstar for Georgia, but I think he's a very valuable piece that the Dogs needed. Jay Brooks, Georgia's asking, that was Georgia's weakest opponent since. And then someone says Nichols in 16, but Georgia almost lost that game.
Yeah.
So maybe not something to talk about.
Nichols had a guy that went
says,
pro.
Amari Carmichael says Nate Frazier is going to be a first-round pick. Roddy's already given him 2 Heismans.
One.
Oh, sorry.
One. Don't taint my predictions. But I do feel
Dude,
bad.
I love Frazier.
Here's the thing. I think go ahead. You're the guy.
I just love Frazier. I just love Frazier. Last week, whenever he got on the field, I was like, "Who is this guy?" And he showed out, and I'm glad that they gave him touches this week, like this game, because part of me was thinking that they wasn't going to put him in because we had ENT and Robinson, so I was thinking that he might not get any touches, but I love that they gave him some touches. Like, I love Frazier.
Well, I mean, he didn't have a huge day today, but how many runs did he get with the first team? Not as many as last week. So.
Yeah, nowhere close, but he still got a couple.
6 carries for 28 yards total, but to your point, Roddy, it wasn't all with the first unit.
Yeah. So.
Again, anything else on your mind, Junior, from Georgia or college football?
What you said?
Anything else on your mind, Georgia-related college football, before we get you out of here?
Georgia related, not really. I'm kind of paying attention to this Notre Dame game, which is confusing to me. But
what's the score now?
It's 13-14, I think. Notre Dame up by a point. I think, 13-14. Notre Dame up by 1. Notre Dame is reminding me of Alabama 2 years ago. So far, like only the first 2 games, to where they're really good, but they just stepping on their own feet the whole way through.
It's hard to get up every single week, right?
Yeah.
Defense looks great, but maybe the offense, something to be desired there. You got to find a way to win those games if you're a championship team. And after last week, I think a lot of people were crowning Notre Dame as they're in the playoff already. Don't even play the rest of the games. They're already in it.
But they had 100 yards of penalties. They had 100 penalty yards last week.
Yeah.
That's why everybody was crowning them. I was like, they're undisciplined. But I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Some of it, I think people looked at the schedule and said that looks very manageable. But all of a sudden, USC doesn't look as easy as maybe it did last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now, I thought Kentucky would easily cruise past South Carolina today, and it's 17-6 halfway through the third quarter, and Kentucky is not doing anything well on offense right now. So, Mark Stoops, Groundhog Day. All right, Junior, we're going to get you out of here, but if you want to hang out later in the show, if you see a spot, always appreciate you.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Junior.
Is Junior. Radi, before I get your overall thoughts, I did want to mention our friends at ASW Distillery, and I do want to point people to a new Instagram page that they have for the Hunker Spirits. So last year, you remember they had the Hunker Vodka, and that was its own entity. Well, now Hunker is the brand for a bigger sector of ASW Distillery. So they have Hunker Bourbon, which you are pouring right now, and I'm jealous because you have it in your hand and mine is at my house and not at our watch along studio.
Yep. Is that enough in a glass?
Oh my gosh.
Shut up.
Woo! If that's what you're doing this week, what are you going to do next week for the night game?
Hey man, you got win in Kentucky.
That's true.
Next week may be some foul mouth nakedness. I don't trust next week.
We can turn your camera off. That's fine. So Hunker Bourbon is being released all over the state of Georgia and beyond. Anytime you buy one of the Hunker products, so Hunker Bourbon, Hunker Vodka, proceeds of that, a portion of it goes to Classic City Collective, which helps Georgia's recruiting efforts. ASW, 5 of the 6 founders are graduates of Georgia. They like to say that they are distilled by dogs. So you're supporting the people that support the same thing that you do. And this needs to be at your tailgate. If you have other bourbons, if you have other vodkas, and it's not Hunker, that's an issue. So get that changed, and thanks to our friends over at ASW Distillery. Honestly, Roddy, I don't feel like a VIP much in this line of work, just because we're like the most F-grade celebrities you could have in the state of Georgia. But when we got one of those first bottles of Hunker bourbon, like straight out of the, I was like, "Look at us go, Roddy! Look at me!"
You get one first off the line, and I mean that stuff is good. And again, I would promote it. Full transparency, I would promote it if I knew that 5 out of 6 of the founders were Georgia fans. I'd say, "Hey, y'all buy this. Stop giving money to Tito's for their vodka." But here's a good one. Then I tried it, and I'm like, "This stuff is delicious." Now, I love their fiddler. I also like their chin music. I love some of their PD stuff is a bit strong for me. But I'm like, okay, let's see what this one is. This is going to be their name brand. This is going to replace all that Maker's Mark crap that's out there. I tease, I kid. Don't hate me, Makers. But there's a lot of people that have, bourbons at their tailgate. I'm like, this stuff is fantastic. So anyway, get it, try it. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I was drinking it long before we even knew these people, and it was great. So, all right, Roddy, you were sitting to my left in the seat that I'm literally touching with my hand right now for 3 hours. So we talked about it during the watch-along show.
Warm,
but in your 15 minutes in the car, anything else come to your brain that you saw in this game that you think is maybe overreaction worthy, but at minimum discussion worthy?
When they came back in the second half, I said Carson Beck will get one series, and then they'll pull him. He might get a touchdown in it, but he has 3 touchdowns and 150 yards. That might be enough for the day. He comes back, maybe they get a long run, maybe he gets a decent throw. He might get close to 200 yards. So when the folks who were like got the Heisman watch on, if they see that he was 72% completions, 18 passes completed, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, they'll be like, okay, well, those are pedestrian numbers when it comes to Heisman Trophy watching. He ends the day, 250, 5 touchdowns, tying, Eric Zayard, who did it, Aaron Murray, who's done it, DJ Shockley, who's done it, Stetson. It's 5 touchdowns in the game. That's the school record. So it puts him. We've seen him climbing those charts, even though he had 1 year as the starter. He's like number 9 or number 10 in number of completions, that same area, and number of passing yards. Against a team like this is when you can pad those stats. If he has 2 touchdowns or he was named Player of the Week last week, and he had 3. So when you have a team like this, Kirby's not going to go out there and let you have a crazy day, 450 yards of passing, 6 touchdowns like Ole Miss is doing with Jackson Dart. But he got it done and very efficient, and he distributed the ball really well. There's only 1 off throw. There were 2 drop passes. So Carson Beck looked great. And then I think what Junior was talking about, the sheer number of spots you had. I lost count after 13, the number of guys that caught the ball. But I don't, it could be 15, it could be 90. When you have a blowout, you kind of expect that. But when they were legitimately running the first team offense, you look, okay, you got 86, Dylan Bell, number 6, Dominic Blaylock, number 11, Arian Smith. Those are your 3 wide receivers on the field. And all 3 of those guys get a scoring touchdown. You're like, okay. Colby Young, who you transferred in for the red zone. Again, the red zone, boom, he gets a touchdown. It's like, this is turning out great. So if number 1's in, you're expecting big things. If number 3's in, you're expecting big things out of the backfield. 32's in, you're expecting big things out of the background. You see 33 get in or number 20, it's like, hey, there's a couple more guys. So it's like, wow, okay, you can do everything in the running. Your running backs can take off. They can break one. Your wide receivers can break one. And we're not even talking about like Nitro Tuggle and Sokovia White, who can show their tail lights. Just your transfer guys and your normal starters are going to get it done. Your offensive line looks incredibly legit with the fact that, you could take Ernest Green out, put Monroe Freeling in there, and he actually just destroys the guy and makes a big hole. They score off that one. or they run right behind. I don't think they scored off it, but they ran right behind him for a huge pickup, to the left side. And Oscar Delp, I'll just put a note on the board. The first thing I heard about Oscar was that he was going to need an MRI for like his knee and his ankle. But then we got a really good source who said no. Kirby Smart said it's a slight ankle sprain. Here, my sources are telling me that it's not that bad. He's not going to be comfortable. But again, you don't know what will happen tomorrow. He could wake up and be in a lot of pain. The swelling could go crazy. But right now, it's about as good as can be for a ankle sprain. So you kind of watch it. But then, like Michael Williams, we're like, okay, he's okay. He's okay. Well, he's out for a while. So you can never know that sort of thing. But I'm getting kind of far afield here. But I think that, everybody's talking about Oscar Delp. I think Lawson Lucky might be I don't say the best tight. I don't want to get into that. But Lawson Lucky has not been getting enough credit for what he is capable of. He can catch, he can throw, he can hit. Not throw. I mean, he can run after the catch. So catch, yak, block. Lawson Lucky, he is a weapon. So this is a team that you expect to put up 49, 56 points, no question. And the defense basically throws, again, another shutout. So what's that, 2 games and 6 points?
Yeah.
I'm no genius, but that's a pretty good scoring difference average right now. And again, I could go through each position on the defense, but it's tedious. But you asked what my overall things are. Same thing I said last week. Georgia has, when you have that national championship pedigree, you have so many different guys who step up in a key point in the game. Ja'Cory Thomas, Ja'Cory steps up and has a big play. Chris Cole steps up and has a big play. Smile Munden and Jalen Walker both burning through the A gaps. That was unfair. That's a hate crime, releasing both those guys through there. And then Christian Miller just crushing through Tyrion Ingram Dawkins coming through that B gap on a twist. That's just rude. But the fact that you have so many different guys, you could go to your 3rd or 4th string running back or your 5th or 6th guy in the wide receiver room or your 6th or 7th offensive lineman, and somebody's going to make a play. So Anthony Evans, of course, sets it up with the special teams. Georgia's going to have a special teams advantage against just about everybody. The one punt that you see Thornton get out there, it's a 55-yarder. So my point is the 21 and 22 teams, when they won titles, there were so many different guys that you could give a helmet sticker to or a game ball or say, Latavius Brini just, comes out of nowhere and saves the day. William Poole does it here. Tay Crowder against Oklahoma. There's always another guy who's not your superstar. It's not your Carson Beck, not your Stetson Bennett, who does wonders for you. And that's what this team feels like through 2 games. So you start seeing all that depth and the quality depth and the production. And I'm like, okay, Kentucky, I thought Kentucky could be they'll play Georgia completely differently. But I'm like, okay, that was supposed to be a big test. Georgia just might go up there and rip out their spine. This is a good-looking football team through 2 games.
One of the other things I think about Carson Beck's, getting the 5 touchdowns, having the stab padding a little bit, that helps with Heisman race for sure.
Yep.
But Georgia as a program has arrived at the place where there are a lot of teams that you have an advantage on because you're big, bad Georgia. And teams get hyped up and they don't get off to a good start. And that's how you can have the appearance that you're up by 14 points before the game ever kicks off. Oh, yeah. Georgia fans know exactly how this feels when you had the big bad monster of Alabama for so many years, where despite the rosters being both very talented, there was some sort of mental edge for what's been accomplished. No team in college football has accomplished what Georgia has in the last few years. So Georgia has that, and when you start seeing these stat lines for Carson Beck, you're like, geez, if he's throwing for 5 touchdowns and they have Trevor Etienne and they have a true freshman in Nate Frazier and they have the best offensive line in the country, what do you even do against that offense?
I also want to point out,
I think that mental edge is a big deal.
Yeah, no, you're right. And when they walk out there and you look at Xavier Truss, you look at Tate Radledge, okay, all SEC. You look at Jared Wilson, he's first-year starter. He's faster than all of us. And you see either Micah Morris or Dylan Fairchild, and then you get to Ernest Green, and you're like, NFL, maybe NFL. All right. And that's what's blocking for your NFL quarterback and your NFL running backs and your NFL wide receivers. You're like, if you're a defensive guy. I mean, it does feel like they're already up 14-0. And you feel like if you make a mistake, they're going to make you pay. Big explosive plays today. That's one, Kirby Smart talks about it all the time. He's like, turnovers and explosive plays. You guys get into the weeds about, do we run power and this, do you run inside zone? Pro style versus spread. You guys want to talk about this, but you don't need to get into the weeds, but it comes down to explosive plays and turnovers. Well, you had explosive plays and you didn't have a lot of turnovers, and that's through 2 games. That's exactly what we've seen. Now, those explosive plays didn't happen in the first half against Clemson. They're happening now. Get a few of those against Kentucky, and every time it feels like they're due for an explosive play, like you said, because of that mindset. And then you go out there on offense, and you're looking at all, those inside linebackers who are so fast, and you can play man on the edge. So it's like, okay, well, you got man, so those safeties can come up and help out, and the linebackers can commit to the run. So even our RPOs aren't going to work like they're supposed to, like we want them to, because we're not really putting those linebackers in conflict. Damn, it's like, well, how do we do this? So you're beat before they step out on the field, and that's how it felt playing Alabama for years. Hell, it's how it felt playing Florida back in the day, or Tennessee, or I mean, there was a while there when Georgia just didn't have the horses. Now your horse is better than theirs, and even if you do kind of stall like you did in the first half, you're like, well, it's inevitable. Here they come. They're going to come. About to crap. We just dropped the ball, or we just had a turnover, and you just know it's done. So. Hell,
Rocket Sanders touchdown, run up the score up in Lexington. South Carolina is off and going. Let's go quad box here, Roddy, because we've got 2 legends of this show that we need to feature together. Eddie from Ackworth is here, and Eddie, we're going to get your thoughts, but you're going to be a bit of a live audience member for a moment, because we got Gary in the house. GG.
Hey guys, how y'all today?
How are you, Gary? Because you wanted to hop in here and save me a little bit, but I told you to wait for Roddy, because I always need Roddy to be here for your appearances, because, if we're going to get sued by something you say, I need the boss man here.
Okay. The game today was what everybody expected. There ain't no real overreaction about that, because, yeah, we can nitpick about Carson missed a throw here, Carson missed a throw there. That will improve as the games improve. As the games goes on, okay? And we got a deep running back room. We got one of the best offensive and defensive lines in college football this year, okay? I'm going to take a little slant on my overreaction to this game, if that's okay.
Sure.
And it's gonna be about this game, but in an odd way. Okay, when they started talking about taking this 12-team playoff, they said, well, we want to do this because it's going to make it more exciting for everybody. Okay. Which it may make it a little bit more exciting. I ain't going to deny that, but that ain't the true reason for it. We all know the true reason for them going to a 12-game playoff is because of the ad revenue that they're going to get from it. Okay, what will really make college football more exciting is to get rid of these damn cupcake candy cookie games during the season, and give the teams that gets away with these cupcake games, give them benefits and change the way that we're going to think about the playoff committee of getting them in. We don't need a team to be undefeated playing cupcake games to get into the daggum playoffs.
Like who?
Like anybody.
Okay. I was wondering if you had a target in mind, because, yeah, I mean, Georgia just played a cupcake game. Do you want to get rid of that one?
Yes, I want to get rid of that one.
I mean, I'm not arguing. I'm just curious. At the same time, if you don't play these games and those schools don't have any revenue, then you don't get to see a Sokovie White or a Nitro Tuggle get into a game until maybe their sophomore, junior year.
Yeah, I understand that we got to fund.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
I understand that the major colleges. I understand that the major colleges got to support the athletic programs from the minor schools because they wouldn't have a program if it wasn't for that. But there is some other way to accomplish that without having cupcake games.
Okay.
I don't know what the answer is. Maybe we set up a fund with the major colleges to donate funds to the minor schools as a whole. But you don't have to do it and make the college assignment frown on the games itself. If that makes sense to me, to y'all.
It does. I'm just going. I disagree in one area because Georgia right now needs 20. Well, of course, the whole House thing is, the House settlement is in flux. But let's just say that the House settlements had sticks and passes. Georgia needs to spend $20 million to pay its student athletes. Okay. Georgia internally, and this hasn't been reported anywhere else, and I've seen this from the notes from a meeting with the staff and the head coach, they expect an additional, they need $4 million on top of that. So they need $24 million in their normal budget, okay? They're not getting an extra $24 million. They have to take $24 million out of their current budget and pay the players all over the athletic department. That's part of the revenue sharing. Of course, they're still supposed to fly them everywhere, take care of all their medical stuff. It's not like they run at a huge surplus. They put this money back into the program. It's not a for-profit thing. So now they're going to lose $24 million. That's been out. They may have to pay even more. So a game like this for Georgia, they were able to pay Texas Tech $550,000. They may make $6-7 million, on the game itself. So this is a huge moneymaker for Georgia. It's a big moneymaker for Texas Tech. And this could be a week where you were playing UCLA. Let's say UCLA came in here, but then later on, Georgia has to go to UCLA. So that weekend they make nothing. So if you want to be able to pay for the program and be able to play at this level, you have to have a UMass. You have to have a Texas Tech. You have to have an East Tennessee State typewriter repair university. I'm just saying we may not like it, but I've never been against these games, mainly because I know the kids come and want to be here, and I get to look down and see the other guys going. I don't get mad about Georgia winning 49-0 because there's games where they win 10-3 against Clemson at a location, that neither team can call home. So, there's smarter people than me that haven't figured out a better way to do it.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I ain't got nothing against these games either. But what I'm saying is call a spade a spade.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump in here. Dayne, Radi, Gary, hope y'all are well tonight. Thanks for letting me on. Great win by Georgia. I'll start with that. Gary, I really think I understand what you're saying. Nobody likes these games as a fan. They're not fun. I don't think the players like them, frankly. I don't think Tennessee Tech, the coach made it sound like it was root canal. He even said that to the reporter on the sideline. So they don't like them either, other than the big check they're getting. But I think these games are going to naturally take care of themselves as we go forward. Power 5, group of 5, group of 4, whatever. They're going to break off. It's going to break off. And Dayne, you and I are going to have our relegation, just like we won in soccer, right? I know you're pumping your fist. It's going to happen. Right now is not the time to bitch about that, because in a couple years, I really think this is all going to be taken care of. And Georgia's cash for clunkers, if you want to call them that, are going to be Georgia State and maybe Kennesaw State, because you're going to help the local programs, right? That's what's going to happen. But today, Georgia did what they had to do. right? Look around the nation right now. This is what I'm most pleased about. As Radi would say, what in the twirling Linda Carter? Are you kidding me? That's the greatest. I literally peed myself when I read that line, Roddy. That's fantastic. Notre Dame is in a dogfight with Northern Illinois. Auburn is losing to California and is getting pushed around the field right now. So Georgia did what they needed to do. And I'll just end with this. My biggest takeaway, Dayne, from this game today was Branson Robinson. He looked like a different player than he did last week. Okay. And I've been through 2 ACLs. The hardest thing is right here. And that's what he was dealing with last week. He was very tentative, and I'm not going to fault him for that. He looked like a different running back today. He ran with authority, and that's what pleased me the most today.
They also called some plays where he wasn't running right up the middle too. They let him have some, it's like, hey, let's get you out. You're not our between the tackles guy only. Let's give you some of the same plays that we called for Nate Frazier last week. Let's let you see what you can do. But you're right. I just think he needed to get a little dirt on the uniform last week. And again, he's going up against maybe one of the best defensive line Georgia's going to see all year.
Last week,
that front is serious. Let's give them credit. They were in that first half. They were tackling machines. We saw the same thing today out of Tennessee Tech. They did not miss a whole bunch of open tackles. They were dropping guys left and right. They tackled very well. Still wasn't enough. And we just did a whole diatribe about how good all the role players are. Georgia's defense, again, is only giving up a few points, but that offensive line and defensive line is where Kirby Smart will tell you he wins games. We all focus, and I'm the worst at it, talking about the skill players, but none of that happens without winning up front. And Georgia,
bullies,
2 weeks in a row, has won up front on the offensive and defensive lines. They're going to go into Kentucky. They're going to face Deion Walker. He's really good. Right now, we're seeing Kentucky's trailing, getting their butts kicked by South Carolina. They need to win next week. They're going to be hosting. That place is going to be sideways. But I'm going to put my money on Ernest Green. And again, even though you don't have Michael Williams, Jordan Hall, Warren Brinson, Xavier McLeod, you got 4 defensive linemen out. But do you see Tyrion Ingram, Dawkins State, Christian Miller?
Kristen Miller, that's the one. Yeah,
just saying, man, those cats can play. And you got guys behind them like Nazir Johnson. This team, again, I'm not trying to get people's hopes up because I'm a Munsonite. Gary's seen me, woe betide, pull out what little hair I have, panic about every good team. But when you can be without 4 potential, starters on your defensive line and still just look like a wall.
Can I do the overreaction since it is the name of the show?
Absolutely.
Before you do, I want to make sure that Gary gets his love real fast, Eddie, just because in the comments it came. Jack White says Gary for commissioner.
I love it. Hey, he's dead on.
Corey says, I wonder if Gary would ever concern a return to politics.
So he's been in it before?
Here? Yeah.
Gary, where were you in politics?
Gary is not listening.
I was a political science major in college.
He does see the big picture. That's why his take on this is about these games. I get it.
Yeah.
He wasn't coming in here talking nitpicking on individual players. He's like, let's look at the big picture. He's a political science guy.
Gary, anything else from you, my friend? I mean, we may have room toward the back end of the show, but I do want to give Eddie some spotlight here for his overreactions too.
Well, just keep Gary on and just let Eddie go nuts.
Yeah,
right, Eddie.
let Eddie go, and then I maybe I can respond to something else.
Hey, Dayne, can you take off these pathetic stats you got up here? Brock Vandergrift, 3 for 9, 30 yards. My God.
You're blaming me when Radi put that on the screen.
I was just checking the score.
I thought you were the producer. I'm sorry.
I mean, yes, producer covers a lot of things that I do for UGA Sports.
Yeah.
I'm not sure all the time.
I'm going to overreact if that's okay, since that's the name of the show. I am very concerned about our quarterback next year because, in my opinion, Gunnar Stockton ain't the man, and we know Brock Vandergrift ain't the guy because he left and he's stinking it up in Kentucky. What do y'all think? I'm looking right now. Radi probably transfer portal. I don't want him to rely on Puglisi at this point, but I didn't like what I saw from Gunnar Stockton today. That was not good. That was painful, in my opinion.
Not alone. Jack White agrees with you there. I think that's one reason Rashada was brought in, just to at least have some options there. But I mean, Roddy, we've talked to a lot of people that see practice. Gunnar Stockton been great in practice. So,
how much of that bourbon? I mean, that Hunker vodka have you had, man?
Me? This is a beer, actually, and I go Falcons tomorrow. It's only beer, Roddy. I haven't started the hunker down yet. No, wait. Are you disputing what I said, Gunnar?
I am because I think I mean, statistically, 10 of 12 is not a bad day. 10 of 12 for 90 yards, but it's not like he's running with the first team. He's not out there running with. He's not running out there. Like, look, this kid, when they had a scrimmage, he torched the first string defense. And this is that same defense we're talking about giving so much credit to. The kid can ball. I wouldn't put him up there as let's say if you interview him, you're not going to accuse him of being a Rhodes Scholar just because he's so bad in interviews. He's a smart kid. I know. I'm saying, so there's he has this kind of country vibe when you talk to him. When you see him get on the field, it's that same vibe that we saw when Stetson Bennett was here as a true freshman, and you had Eason going up against Fromm, and I had people whisper to me, going, "Hey, man, I know that's the thing y'all are watching, but if I was going to play anybody, I'd play that number 13 kid, the one they call Johnny Football." And I'm like, Stetson Bennett, mailman? He goes, yeah. So it's just when he gets in there, the way the players react around him, the way they kind of get with him. Every time I went to Rabin and watched him play, he would score either 5, 6, or 7 touchdowns himself, either throwing or passing. So I'm just saying the kid.
Rob Vandergrift did that at Prince Avenue Christian, Roddy, right?
Yeah, I'm saying and Brock's could have been your starter next year if he'd stuck around. Not saying he's the kid. I just said if you put him with the first team, I expect a different performance. And you call plays that go to his strength, let him tuck and run, let him be a danger with his feet. It's different when you're calling it for the first team than when you're calling it for, hey, we just need to run the clock out here. That's all I'm saying. If he were doing, I guess, what Brock is now in a true game with the number one offense, then I would be worried. But this, based on judging him as the backup, to me isn't fair. Because of what I've seen him do to this point, I'm like, this kid is really talented. And again, I'm not saying that. This is the people on the team telling me this. These are the people that warned us what was going to happen with all the different, when we break news with these guys, they're the ones that they're saying, this kid can play. And he's tough as nails. And if everything breaks down, he could take off and run. When has Georgia had that? I mean, Stetson did a little bit, but you had to be sure you had a good quarterback behind him. I think he's different.
Is he a better runner than Stetson Bennett?
He's a lot stronger.
Yeah, he's stronger for sure.
Not faster, though, is he?
Stetson was elusive. Stetson did not have any right to be that elusive. Stetson reminds me of kind of lad.
Have any right to be elusive? What does that mean?
Yeah, because he doesn't look it. He looks about as athletic, as a guy working at Belk.
Who cares what he looks like?
I'm just saying on the hoof, you're like, nah, that kid's never leaving the pocket. Look at him. He's too short. He's pasty. Oh, cool. He got a good haircut. I mean, curly hair and glasses. Come on. You're not expecting him to tuck and run, but he did.
Well, here's the
Gunner looks like he will run your ass over, and he will.
The gap that I see here, Eddie, and that I agree with you on, is that in between Carson Beck and in the watch-along show, Jared Curtis's name came up. And Coach Donnan on our show said that that's probably the most talented arm that Georgia will have had at quarterback since Matthew Stafford.
Is that right? More so than Puglisi? What does he say about Puglisi?
I'm telling you what he said today, and Puglisi would be a quarterback in that range.
He raves about Puglisi. Puglisi is going to be a star. I would have no problem if he gave Puglisi looks like he should be in the NFL right now. Shoulders this wide. He just has that aura about him. The kid he's going to be a star. I think it'll be a great race between the two of them next year. But that'll be year 4 in the system for Gunner.
And Yeah,
He's
and
gonna be
that's
able to run everything
and
that
that's
Georgia
what
runs.
I said today. He understands the offense better than anybody else coming back, right? And I understand that. I understand, and it's a year away. I mean, it's the overreaction show. I may be
No,
totally
I'm
off
with you.
base, but it's a little bit of what I saw today.
And I'm
a little
talking
bit
you
of
off the ledge.
flavor, and that's what I wanted to see in the second half. I wanted to see Gunnar Stockton, how he did, how he reacted, and it just didn't. It looked plotting and painful to me.
Well,
So
but
it's one game.
I
That was
don't
my
know how
prediction.
fair,
Was that he would blow out. I was wrong.
I don't know how fair it is either, just in this situation, because should Gunnar Stockton be Georgia's next quarterback, the offense changes, and I think it looks a little bit more like what Buster Faulkner is doing with Haynes King. That element of football
Yeah,
comes into the game
that's
that Georgia
fair.
has not had in
That's
the last
fair.
couple of quarterbacks.
Because
So,
Carson Beck ain't running that type of offense. There's no,
and neither was Stetson Bennett, to be fair, because
Yeah,
you have to be a
yeah,
tough runner
yeah.
for some of those interior runs.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean they called two designated runs for him, and hey, one was a good tackle and one was a bad block. So again, he gives you a different shake. But Ryan Puglisi is going to be an absolute star, and I'm not trying to pass Ryan Montgomery. We hope he gets healthy really soon. But I specifically went to the Masters this year on Friday, and I drove from Augusta all the way to Nashville that night, so that Saturday morning I could watch a Under Armour camp with Jared Curtis. And I don't know if you know how far that is, but that's a long ass drive. I got in like 2:00, slept for 3 hours, got up and went to the camp. It's fun to check in and be the last guy to check in and the first guy to check out. It's like, hey, thanks. Should have just slept in the car, honestly. Jared Curtis throws the ball so hard it whistles. Jamarcus Russell, who Peyton Manning says is the strongest quarterback he's ever heard, the guy who could throw 60 yards from his knees, was just raving about the fact that when Jared Curtis throws the ball, you can hear it spinning in the air. You don't hear it with anybody else. The last person I heard throw like that, where you hear the ball arrive, you hear it whistling and it hit somebody's hands, was Matt Stafford. So Jared Curtis is a star. But again, he still got 2 years to go. But next year, I could see it go to Gunnar, then Puglisi. But when Jared Curtis gets here, that's son of a gun. And again, it's not a shot against Ryan Montgomery, but if Ryan can hold off Jared Curtis, that will be because he's going up against the best arm I've seen in a long time. So
I agree with Rowdy.
Rowdy Gaines.
Rowdy
can't.
Piper.
We can't.
Nabulsi.
We can't really seriously judge Gunnar on this game today. He looked good in the few attempts he had last year. And I remember a few years ago when he was still in high school, they came down here to Thomasville, Georgia, not against my team, but against Matt Bobo's team, Thomasville High.
I forgot.
Gunnar Stockton got a broken nose in the playoff game. I think it was a playoff game, but he got a broken nose in a playoff game in the first or second quarter of that game. And he was bloody all over. And he still ran the ball all over Thomasville, threw the ball all over Thomasville. And I'm talking about a real good, talented squad of Thomasville High Bulldogs. But Gunnar Stockton still ran it down the throat, still threw it down and beat their asses to the ground. Gunnar Stockton has talent. Whether he can put it all together for next year, that's a different story. He got the talent to be a great quarterback.
I agree with you 100%. He's tough. A lot of quarterbacks, they're now I can't use that word. I'm scratching all these words off. Later in the show, after I finish off this drink, I might use them. But
hey, while you find that word, I'm going to sneak in with a super chat because they supersede all of our conversation. KC, if Gunnar was a starter, he can compete against Bama, Texas.
Can he?
If Gunnar was a starter, can he compete against Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss? And what I'm telling you is that with Georgia's cast, I think Eddie could have Georgia competing. With those ACLs?
How many times when they run that fake inside, they run inside zone or run any of these plays, and all of a sudden you see a guy, they fake up the middle and he bootlegs out, then he throws it, or he hands it off and bootlegs out, but he never keeps it. the backside guy comes crashing in because he never expects him to keep it. You keep a guy like that and who actually takes off and Casey keeps the ball a few times. Now all of a sudden they have to play completely different. You have an Arian Smith out there who's going to take off. Again, has Georgia used him to his full capacity yet? Like, look, 9 go routes. Just beat the guy off it. We're going to throw it as hard as we can. You run as fast as you can, and let's see if you get it. And all of a sudden that safety can't keep creeping up anymore. And now you've got all these slant routes and all this mesh stuff underneath. I'm just saying that with a running quarterback, that's what I'm scared about Alabama.
Yeah.
Running quarterback changed the outlook of the game. And again, I was going to use the word effeminate, but that's not fair. There are a lot of quarterbacks who are kind of prima donnas who don't want to put their head down. They're thinking, look, I'm a multi-million-dollar quarterback. I'm not going to try to – I'm going to slide. I'm taught to slide. I'm the most important guy on the field. I need to slide. Gunner won't slide. He's a psycho. As Gary says, he gets his nose busted. He keeps going. This kid likes to truck people over. Malachi Stark said he almost made me quit football. He's just – that's a toughness that you go back to
and something we ain't taking into consideration. Okay. And people can hate on Mike Bobo all they want, say he ain't worth a crap at offensive coordinator. But what is the real good thing that Mike Bobo do? Get in the head of quarterbacks. He can coach up some quarterbacks. Some of Georgia's best quarterbacks was when Matt Bobo was quarterback coach at Georgia. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I won't.
You're right.
Because
In fact, with Gunner in particular, they've had a relationship so long. I mean, you're going back. You remember, Gunner Stockton was likely going to go to South Carolina when Mike Bobo was the offensive coordinator there. So the best version of a Gunner Stockton is likely going to be with a Mike Bobo just because they would be so simpatico. Now, just because you know somebody doesn't mean that they're good enough to compete at the highest level in the SEC, and I understand that too. But I do think that Georgia's going to get the best of what Gunner has within him.
I want to raise one more thing. Were you guys just a hair, and I'm my fingers are almost together, concerned about with the way Carson Beck threw a couple of his passes, maybe 5 of his passes today? A little bit off. The one he hit Arian Smith deep was a little bit short. Arian almost had to stop on the route. The one he hit Dylan Bell, I don't know if that was Dylan Bell's fault or what. Remember the one he threw behind him and he was open? It looked like zone coverage to me. Maybe Dylan should have settled down in that zone. It was his fault. I don't know. There at the end of the half when they're trying to go down there and score, 2 passes to me Carson Beck was off on that could have got us down there to score. Just a hair of a concern there or not?
Yeah, he had 2 that were off last week. And he is – what was the number one critique or criticism of Carson Beck last year?
Deep ball accuracy.
But wasn't the deep touchdown that he threw, wasn't it on stride, if I'm not mistaken?
No,
it wasn't.
Stop him.
Terribly off.
Okay.
Yeah, he had his man beat by like 5 yards, and he had to stop.
He had to stop? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He also had there's the free play where the guy jumped off sides and he had tried to hit Dylan Bell down the left sideline, and that wasn't anywhere close either.
Yeah,
again,
I'm kind of concerned about that, but I think that will improve as the season goes forward. I'm serious about that.
And Gary, I think you're right, because we saw that last year. There was a bit throwing behind guys. It's like, how many guys on slant routes did he throw behind him? And by the end of the season, that wasn't happening. The same thing. Remember when Ladd McConkey had the yips?
Yep.
Ladd went a while there where he just wasn't catching. And there's one game where it's really bad. So you stick with a guy through stuff like that. And again, you saw Carson, he throws the ball and he goes, oh my God, that was on me. I was trying to throw over. Was it a Dominic? And he just, or Arian, I think it was Arian. He overthrew him. And he's like, God, that wasn't anywhere close. So he knows the ones he misses, but there's also a lot of ones that he hits and he fires it into a tight window.
Oh, sure. But here's my concern, Roddy, is that you have a critical play against Alabama on the road and you miss that throw, and that's the difference in the game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, today it didn't matter because he played so well in the first half, but you got to hit on those when they're open. Like you said, that one in the end zone, he overthrew that, and that's a touchdown. You got to hit that, right? And he
No, yeah,
immediately said
absolutely.
he immediately did that. He knew he overthrew it. So
Yep.
just like I said, that's a hair of a concern, right? Just a hair.
It is, but here's the question: is that normal? I mean, is that just football?
That's football,
Or
man.
is that a concern about Carson Beck? Because, I mean, even to me, and I'm with Gary, I think it is just football because, hell, even Peyton Manning be like, yeah, I was behind him on that throw. It's
Yeah,
like,
and man, maybe the receiver got bumped off his route a little bit, and he wasn't. I mean, like I said, Dylan Bell should have settled down in that zone opening, and he didn't, and he kept running.
It did hit Dylan's hands, and he's like,
well, I mean, that was
you can catch it, baby. I know that's not fair to the receivers, but
catch. I know.
And it's still a filling out process this year because, like I said last week, he lost his top 2 or 3 receivers from last year, so he's still filling out players.
Well, basically, think about it. He also kind of lost 4 because he lost, take out Marcus Roseby, Saint, Ladd McConkey, and Brock Bowers. He also worked a lot with Rah.
Yeah.
Rah, yep.
So there is a lot of that timing. But again, I mean, I would be concerned. I'm with you 100% because you got to make those plays. But when it comes to how many he hits, he just set the single season record for the most completion percentage, although most of those were not downfield. So,
but do all passes got to be downfield?
No,
I want first downs. I want first downs.
No, but if you've got it, what does Kirby Smart want? I think was it Nick Saban who was going on and on about this on Game Day today? Explosive plays. The 5 and 6 yard square outs are great, but at some point you got to hit a 17-yarder. At some point, you got to hit a guy in stride, and the game has slowed down. In other words, I think through 2 games, we're seeing that same difference that we saw with Stetson Bennett. Remember that first year they won the title? He wasn't even the starter. Then he comes in to replace JT. But then the next year he just goes undefeated, wire to wire. He looked like the game was so easy and calm for him.
I mean,
they struggled a couple times.
Radi, a lot of fans had questions about him going into that national championship game, and it probably wasn't until that 4th quarter of that first national championship
he
won over the fan base.
Yeah, because he had already faced Alabama twice and lost. And that he played like I was still a line. Nah, that's no longer PC. He played like a 3-legged goat for the first 3 quarters.
And Dayne, I'll add to that when he threw that weird pass that ended up being a fumble and the guy caught it going out of bounds against Alabama. That's when everybody was like, see, this is not your guy. I guarantee that's when 90% of the fan base see, we told you about this guy. And then he throws a strike for the touchdown. I forgot the guy's name. He transferred. Sorry. But anyway, you get the point, right?
To be fair, it wasn't just fans thinking that about Stetson Bennett. Dwan Mathis was selected over him. Carson Beck at the time was selected over him in a week of practice. Yeah. Stetson was just there, and it finally worked out. So maybe they all had reasons to think that.
I get it. And in that same game, he played bad. Then all of a sudden he comes through, and when they get the pick 6, you see him. He's like, finally, Yeah. So he kind of breaks down on the sideline because there were definitely questions, but look how did you see that same guy in year 2, 15-0, and just was different. I think we might get that from Carson Beck this year. I mean, there's no pressure. I mean, I don't say there's no pressure. There's pressure to win another title, but it's like, look, I've proved what I can do. Now I'm the guy who's returning. A lot of those other guys went to the NFL. Some of them left early. I'm an NFL pick. I can just sit here and pick you apart. He's made some good checks. So, again, miss a few, but
hey, you might want to put up the Notre Dame score. They're about to lose, Dayne. Are you watching that?
No, I'm
Northern
seeing
Illinois.
if Auburn can come back.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just an optimist, but I can see the potential of our team.
I'm with you.
We got one of, if not the best offensive lines in football, one of the best defensive lines of the football in college football game, if not the best. We 4 or 5 deep in the running back room. We 3 or 4 deep in the tight end room, and our receivers are looking good.
Well, I tell you what made me feel good, Gary. I'll tell you this right now, and I'll tell all of y'all, is watching the Texas-Michigan game. Because, okay, Texas may be all that, I don't know. But compare Michigan's defense to ours. Michigan's defense is horrid. It was putrid. They can't tackle. They can do – and I was just watching that game going, Georgia would have had that for a loss. Georgia would have picked that ball. Our defense is head and shoulders above what we saw today at Michigan. And I'm not discounting what Texas did. It was a great win for them. They went into Michigan in the big house and beat them up, whatever. But I felt much better about playing Texas than I did thinking about it before the season started because of the defense.
Eddie, Michigan's still a sore subject on me, bro. Because if we would have got in the playoffs last year, we would have whipped that ass again, and we would have got our 3rd straight national title.
It's the revenge tour, Gary. Right now, it's the revenge tour.
Georgia fans should be very optimistic because it is one of the deepest rosters in the country. It's one of the most talented rosters in the country. When you just look at total talent, it's like Georgia and Ohio State, right? And so what happens from that point?
Gary,
the
you're wrong.
variable that I think is going to be frustrating for some Georgia fans is that when you expand the playoff, and we see this with a ton of other sports, you just add a degree of randomness to this. And so the best team, the best roster is not always going to win the championship anymore. And maybe, to Gary's point, that didn't even happen last year, right?
Right.
No.
But I will say this to counter that, Dayne. There's going to be attrition, as there always is, just like the NFL in the playoffs, right? It's the healthiest team, which is a lot of luck, but we have the depth to maybe overcome some of that attrition that we're going to encounter as we go through the playoffs, right? And maybe some other teams don't. Maybe some other teams don't.
One injury at the wrong position, and Georgia could be behind the 8 ball having to figure it out.
No doubt.
Just like all teams are.
Okay, now my question is the hype truly for real for the national media of what Carson Beck is getting right now? Is that for real?
Not getting any hype. I predicted this on our show. I don't think Carson Beck goes to New York. I don't think he makes it to New York.
Well, they putting him in the top 3 right now.
Yep.
Yeah, but there's so many other running backs.
They got him and Shedeur
I don't think
the top 2 picks.
Personally, I don't think he get numbers to even get to New York.
Exactly.
He had 5 TDs today.
But with how deep our running back room is and how we know Kirby don't like to run the score up, I don't think he gets the numbers.
And that's why in your 3-2-1 report, Radi, when you said Nate Frazier and you backed off a little bit, but you still think it, Nate Frazier for Heisman one day, I don't ever see that because of the way we run running backs in there. Look at today. I mean, I know he's a freshman. He's not going to get a lot of carries, but even next year, it's going to be running back by committee. That's the way Kirby Smart does things, right?
And running backs don't win it, but I'm just saying.
And last week we had a running back that had like 5, 6, or 7 touchdowns in one game. Now, you think Kirby gonna let Carson Beck run up scores so he can get stats to go to win the Heisman? I don't think so. He ain't never played like that.
I think it's more likely that Carson Beck wins the Heisman than he's the number 1 overall pick. I think that was one of the things that happened in the offseason is people hyping him up to be NFL top pick in a draft. I don't see that for him. Could be wrong. I mean, he has an arm, don't get me wrong, but like Eddie, you're a big Falcons fan. After Penix, maybe this is a moot conversation, but if the Falcons needed a quarterback and that was the draft that you got Beck first overall, would you be like overly excited, or would you just be like, well, this is what it is?
Give me Shedeur. He fits the NFL mold right now. He does. Hey, that game is over, by the way. And Notre Dame with one loss, are they out of the playoffs at this point? What do y'all
No,
think?
not at all.
They could be. Could be.
You don't think so, Dane?
I think Notre Dame is still clearly in a spot to likely be in the playoff. I think they would need 3 losses to be out.
3? You think they need 3?
Dude.
Holy cow. That's
They ain't in the
insane.
conference. Come on now.
That's why. They're not in the conference. They will not have to play in a conference championship game. So there's a lot of teams that play in conference championship games that if all things were even at the end, the last thing we will have seen is them lose and Notre Dame not.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but they got some tough games ahead. They got some tough games ahead. They're behind the 8 ball now. This is bad.
Go look at their schedule. It ain't a whole lot of tough games. I get that they just lost to Northern Illinois.
They just lost, yeah, exactly.
I get that, but they don't have Georgia's schedule for sure.
Come on. If they would have went perfect this year, the highest seed they would have got was 5 because they don't play in the conference championship.
Right. Look, here's one.
If they lose one more, they're out. I'm telling you, they lose one more, they're out.
If this loss would have been in November,
out now.
I agree with you. But because this loss happens in September, there's so much more football that we'll think about and not think about this as much anymore.
Yeah, because Alabama did the same thing last year. Lost one real early and then came back in.
NIU.
All right, I'm going to check out, boys. Dane, if you need me to come back, let me know.
Appreciate you.
Well,
thank you, boys.
What a lot of people don't realize, yes, NIU is a small group of 5 or whatever they are, but they got a real good program too. They play some ball at NIU.
They do. They do.
It's just a long season. Like,
I get it, the whole, losing early versus losing late, but you lose. It'll be like losing to App State tonight.
I lived up there in Springfield, Illinois for about 6 or 7 years, and I followed them for a while. I followed their schools up there for a while. And NIU ain't no cakewalk like what everybody thinks.
But the randomness of college football is just that Notre Dame can go to one of the toughest places to play last week, Texas A&M and that crowd, and look defensively fantastic. And I think they have a really good head coach. I think that they have one of the better quarterbacks in the country. And all that, they still just lost at home to Northern Illinois. Back-to-back weeks after doing that. So could this team go beat USC? Could this team get in the playoff and make a run to a Final Four? Or
they got to quit beating themselves. They got to quit beating themselves.
Gary, this is the type of game you said you didn't want to see anymore.
Ooh, look at Roddy. Roddy, wow.
Well, I didn't say I'm totally against these games. What I said was I want college football or the NCAA or whoever running this crap to say, call a spade a spade. If you're going to try to do something to improve the excitement of college football, it ain't expanding the daggone playoff. That is done for revenue, for ESPN and NCAA can make more money. Period. It ain't nothing about the excitement of college football. There ain't nothing considered to that. The more exciting thing would be improving the regular season.
More money, what would it matter? I'm with you because
they're attempting a 62-yard field goal attempt right now. Oh, yeah, they just shanked it. Never mind.
Gary, I'm with you. My pet peeve is when news outlets say they're either political news outlets or CNN, Fox, whoever, Georgia outlets or college football outlets. When you have a implicit bias and you try to pretend that you are not biased, it ticks me off. I'd rather you just come out and say, "Hey, yeah, we are right. We are left. We are, communists. We are, capitalists. We are screw the workers. We are for the workers. We are for Georgia. We are for Florida. We are for Tennessee." I get that. I'm with you. I like to call a spade and say what it is. And if they come out and said, "Hey, we voted as school presidents to expand the playoffs so that we could make a lot more money. Okay.
I'm fine with that.
But to me, two things could be true. You say we did that, but also the side effect of that is we just had a 10-minute argument about whether or not Notre Dame's in or not. If it's a 4-team playoff, Notre Dame's done.
Okay.
But
FSU was done week 1. But now they're not, according to Dayne, because they got to lose 3 times. But people are like, FSU had hope in week 2. That was gone. But anybody losing today, yeah, they had 2 losses before by the time week 1 was over. Anybody losing today in week 2 is not out of it because, hey, there's 12 teams. So it could be true. 2 things could be true. The playoffs could be all about making some money, and that's why they're going to go to 16 instead of just 12. Mark my words. But you're right about the fact that it was it could also be true that, yeah, you're not ending the season for some of these teams.
Radi, let me ask you a question, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Last year was an outlier. Okay. How many, other than last year, how many times has there been more than 2 or 3 teams that had a real shot at winning the national championship if they would have been in the expanded playoff? That's my question.
Oh, man. I'm just looking at just Georgia alone, the number of times they could have been in there.
I mean, was last year an outlier? Because I still think it was like 3 or 4 teams last year.
Well,
They didn't get the right 4 teams.
They didn't get the right 4. And I tell you the right 4. The right 4 was Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Missouri. That was the right 4. I don't care what anybody said. That was the right 4.
I'm with you there. Hey, I need to mention our friends here. I have the Rogue Shop on the screen here. Now, the Rogue Shop makes some of the best damn gummies you'll ever find anywhere. Well, that you will find anywhere. And the Rogue Shop story is basically you had a former college athlete and a guy who went off into the military who wound up getting hurt. And he came back and, he's like, hey, I'm in a lot of pain. I have chronic pain and I don't want to get hooked on opioids. And the pharmacist and the doctor is like, well, yeah, you can have Oxycontin or Codone or whatever, hydrochloroquine, whatever, for this number of days. But beyond that, you're going to start to get hooked on it. So he started looking into it because he's a smart guy. He went to college. And he found out about cannabinoids. Okay. Cannabinoids like in cannabis. So he found out that they have an anti-inflammatory thing. So he started looking around and couldn't find anything he liked and started developing his own. So Richard and his wife, Charmaine, over the Rogue Shop created the Rogue. They created the Rogue Shop, making a use of cannabinoids, THC, and you'll see that like they have oils, they have topicals, they have Delta 8 products. The topicals, if you have like a sore knee like I do, this stuff is fantastic. If you want the CBD oils, they have those as well. And the Delta 8 and the Delta 9 products are fantastic for if you have inflammation, chronic pain, or you have sleep issues. I have best friend Cheryl down in Pensacola. She has had insomnia for decades. This is the only thing that she has found that has helped her out. So when you go and you click on the Delta 8 products or something like that, you'll see that they'll say night use, or chronic pain issues, So check out our friends at the Rogue Shop. If you have any questions, you can actually chat with Charmaine, the co-owner, any time of day. It'll go straight to her phone. She'll walk you through it, and they will take great care of you, whether you want the Delta 8, Delta 9, the brownie mix, the drinks, the flowers, the pre-rolls, all that fun stuff. They got it for you at the Rogue Shop. Use promo code Bulldogs10, BULLDOGS 10. The reason I say that, you get 10% off, but it also tells them how many people we're sending them. So check out the Rogue Shop when you get a chance. They do fantastic work. And right now, if I had one of those THC Delta 8s watching Notre Dame lose, I'd do half of one of those gummies, baby. Hey, Foster Moss is in the chat.
Well, yeah, if y'all are in the chat, you want to hop in and be on the show, links in the description over on YouTube. So come hang out with us. I do.
What's the chance that the SEC gets 4 or 5 teams, let's say 5 teams into playoffs this year?
0 for 5.
You think 0 for 5?
5 out of 12. That's just a political thing that the playoff committee won't do.
What about 4?
I think 4 is almost guaranteed. I think 5 is a possibility with 3 going to the Big Ten, and then everybody else gets to scrap over the last 4.
Well, I mean,
I think you're going to have 5 SEC teams in the top 12.
You get 4 conference champions and then 1 group of 5, right? So, and yeah, so that would be 5 out of 12 right there. So you're saying essentially split the rest between SEC and Big Ten?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm not quite there.
That's it. Oh, wait, Colorado's losing?
Dylan Rayola's already doing something to that? I guess they're about to start, right? Or is it over? I don't know.
That's why I'm backing up here. So,
if y'all need to kick me out, go ahead.
Nah, you're fine there. I'm just kind of enjoying the comment section here. Casey says FSU was overrated all last year. Yeah.
FSU was okay as long as they had Winston.
You going back a ways.
I mean, not Winston, but what was their quarterback?
Jordan Travis.
Yeah, Travis. They was okay until they lost Jordan Travis. They was a whole different team after Jordan Travis got injured.
Let's peek at the schedule a little bit for next week. So on Friday night, you get Arizona versus Kansas State, which is a game between 2 ranked teams there, right? So Kansas State is one of those teams that I don't think any of us expect them to be in the playoff, that I could totally see being in the playoff picture when you're talking 12 teams by the end of it. What if they lose in the conference championship and that's only their second loss? That's one reason I just don't think a lot of people are going to be out of this very early on. LSU goes to South Carolina next week. We know Georgia goes to Kentucky, which we all thought was going to be Brock Vandagriff playing against Georgia after all the time being at Georgia, but really, who knows after this particular performance. Alabama goes to Wisconsin, which I don't think that's going to be that difficult of a game for Alabama, but that's a SEC, Big Ten referendum to some degree. Boston College and Missouri, I think, could be tight after what we just saw from Boston College against Florida State. Notre Dame has to go to Purdue. Tulane, we saw them play tough, gets to go to Oklahoma. There's a lot of sneaky games where I think upsets can happen next week. And so I think we're going to see a lot of attrition of more teams having losses than we're used to, and the playoff allowing for that.
That makes sense to me. I'm with you.
Well, if the committee changes the way they vote people in, committees always like that 0 at the end.
Oh,
a 0 at the end don't necessarily mean nothing if you don't play as tough a schedule as other people. That's my opinion.
And you'll probably have the Liberties of the world, some group of 5 team that is undefeated, that finds its way in the playoff as the only one that gets that distinction. And then they'll get to match up with likely an SEC or Big Ten team that has 3 losses from playing a tougher schedule. But Georgia shouldn't be punished for having to go play at Texas and Alabama if it drops one of those games. And I think that was probably the criticism last season, was that Florida State, for whatever you want to say, they were one of the 12 best teams in the country. So at least should have had a path to play for that. Georgia, just because it lost to Alabama in a close game at the end of the year.
A postseason game.
Right, a postseason game. That shouldn't have made them ineligible for whatever postseason event that it was. So yeah,
that's my pet peeve is everybody else lost in the regular season. They didn't. I'm like, man, that's not fair.
So we're going to have more teams involved in the playoff, and we're going to have more teams that aren't qualified to be in a championship hunt. But it almost guarantees that everyone that has a legitimate argument is held within that. And if you remember, going back to the early 2000s, that's how all this started anyway, because Auburn went undefeated and didn't get to play for anything.
Yep.
See, Auburn's always screwing it up for everybody.
Well, right now, they're about to screw it up for themselves because they're down 7 points with a ticking clock and 40 seconds left.
That's what I was looking for. Where's that?
And tell you the truth, I don't necessarily like that ticking clocks bull crap.
Well, a clock
takes
does one thing, Gary. It ticks.
it takes some of the strategy. It takes some of the strategy out of the game.
You want it to stop after everything?
No, I want it back the way it used to be.
Well, things are changing, Gary. I hate to tell you, we got to.
Well, I understand that, but I don't have to like it.
That's fair.
That's my man.
You ain't got to like anything.
I'm gonna die if Auburn loses. Oh man! And again, everyone has been on the. I
guess I
Auburn
get used to it.
Man, they've been raving about them. You know, they're like Auburn is. You know, they have recruited well. They're recruiting well right now. We're watching a running back out of Atlanta who's really good, Grosma, kind of trending that way. You know, we're prepared in case he decides to pick Georgia, but it's just, you know, they've recruited well, and you got to. I mean, I know people kind of made jokes about the coach, but he don't do it very long. Nick Saban is like, yeah, they're going to be the surprise team of the SEC. They might. I mean, you don't lose to Cal, and they could win it. They can pull this out. But what was the line of this game, Dayne?
Auburn?
Yeah.
Let me look it up real fast.
I know Jack White probably knows, or Indy Clip, or David Lunas. And Junior Jones, what's with the upsets? Yeah.
I'm saying Auburn 10.5.
Yeah, I mean, you're a 10.5 point favorite at home. You're not supposed to be down by 7 with 28 seconds left.
Anywhere between 10.5 and 13.5.
Jeez. So you're a 2-score favorite, and you're trailing by 7. And again, hey, Georgia could lose. I mean, God, I've been doing it 30 some odd years. It happens. But this is not the surprise team in the SEC.
This is the game that you're supposed to win if you're a surprise team.
Auburn apparently picked off. Hey, Randy, you want to get on here and explain what the hell's going
on? What do you think the line for Georgia Kentucky is going to be?
Georgia 11.5, 12.5?
Because I'm looking at one site right now that's showing 18.
Woof.
Ooh.
On the road.
To me, Georgia's automatic. You know, that's going to be a 2-score favorite, but 18. It's almost.
Because I'm wondering what it was coming into today, and then I'm wondering how today affects.
That's a good point. Yeah, I was really thinking about factoring in today's stuff. But see, one thing that bugs me, and this is if I actually bet, I take into account when a team has been backed into a corner. When you lose a game you're not supposed to, the next week you come out with something to prove, which is why I was so stunned that FSU got their teeth kicked in by Boston College. You know, they just got manhandled. But I was thinking, man, after losing to if I was a betting person after they'd lost to Georgia Tech, I'd have been like, yeah, just hammer Florida State to just get revenge on somebody and to go out and just get blasted by Boston College. So I would, in other words, Kentucky needs to win next week really badly to get their season back on schedule. There's the final, 21-14.
So here's
Auburn
one point.
Goes down.
When this happens to Auburn, when this happens to Notre Dame, and Florida State, I'm not throwing in this mix. When this happens to Kentucky, all of a sudden, you look at LSU, and you're like, their game 1 against USC, not bad. So, like, in comparison, you would already put LSU back in the top 15 teams in the country, right? After squandering a game that they probably should have won. And I get that that's...
Yeah, but that was at least close.
Right. But, I mean, some of these games were close. It's just the quality of opponent there. I think week to week,
that to me is not close. You know, if you're going up against NIU and you lose at home, you play Cal at home and you lose when you're that much of a favorite. That to me is, I don't want to call it, I hate to call anybody not a quality opponent, but you know, if it's 2 ranked teams and you lose by 1 score, then that's just a bad day.
But as bad as we think about Florida State right now, if Florida State ran the table right now, it's in the playoff. Now, it's not going to happen because they're not that good. But if Florida State ended up 10-2 with losses to Tech and Boston,
they ain't going to do it.
They'd be in. I
Well,
completely agree.
they
They're
would have
not
knocked
going
off
to.
Clemson and Miami, so they'd have
But
some.
if
quality
Notre
wins.
Dame goes 10-2, they're in the playoff. If Auburn goes 10-2, it's in the playoff.
Notre Dame needs to clean up their football. Notre Dame could be winning. Could have won that game today if they didn't have all them penalties. The same can be said about the game last week. They could have won by a lot more last week if they wouldn't had all them penalties.
And I was told Peyton Thorne was the guy. Yeah, I'm with Junior Jones. You start questioning the strength of the SEC. It has not been a good 2 weeks for the SEC.
I mean, the top of the SEC looks fantastic. Texas today, Georgia, Alabama, I think still looks like a really good team.
Ole Miss.
Yeah, Ole Miss is not. They haven't played anybody.
But that is not the SEC. So I'm with him there, which says you question the strength of it. The thing has always been with the SEC is like top to bottom, we're a better conference than you. Our number 5 team could win your conference. Our number 8 team would, have a winning record in your conference. There have been a lot of ugly losses that the SEC has suffered lately. And again, I mean, kind of surprising that some of the losses we saw. I mean, losing to USC is not the end of the world. I mean, USC is a good football team, but some of those others are not.
Maybe it's a product of expectations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not allowed to lose when everyone says you're the best,
Oh, I see Junior's popping back on here, wanting to react to Auburn, I'm guessing. Oh, man.
No,
Junior, are you naked?
No,
are you on
I'm
the remote?
Wait for the sun to set, Junior.
It looks like you're on the toilet.
I'm just shirtless. I'm
Okay,
on the
all right.
couch. I'm on the couch.
It looks like a shower curtain behind you, and I'm like, this
No, so I jumped back in because, like you said, like questioning the strength of the SEC. And yes, Georgia's gonna be Georgia. Alabama's gonna be Alabama. But we always have let's say Ole Miss. The SEC teams beat up on Ole Miss, but Ole Miss usually go out and beat up on Big Ten or Pac-12 or whoever. So now, we have SEC teams losing these games. It's so that affects Georgia's strength of schedule, Alabama strength of schedule. So, is the SEC where we need to be?
Who's the 4th and 5th best teams in the Big Ten?
Big Ten is crazy right now.
Right.
Because
My question is, are they better than Ole Miss and LSU?
I don't know because honestly,
USC just beat Oregon, and they're like the 5th or 6th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now Ohio State number 1 in Big Ten. The other rankings in the Big Ten can be debated. Oregon didn't look good. Penn State looked good for what they have played so far. Michigan, they garbage this year. Who's the other good teams in the Big Ten? I don't know.
Really nobody.
Wisconsin.
I love Wisconsin. They used to be good, but they ain't good no more. They would have trouble with
the best running backs ever, man. That was the spot.
They would lose against Mississippi State right now.
Yeah. They almost lost to Georgia Southern last year, but Georgia Southern threw 5 interceptions.
And I like Wisconsin. I like to watch their football because I like that hard-nosed run the football
you
right
Iowa
straight
guy.
at you.
You love you some Iowa, Gary. Gary from
Yeah,
Iowa.
I like Iowa. I admit it.
Yeah. So what's the final on that? I was down 19-20 with 1 second left.
Yeah, 19-20. I think it's the end of the game. I'm looking at it. There's 0 seconds. It's all zeros on the clock, but there's somehow a timeout. So I don't know what's going on right now.
All right. What says final? Iowa State upsets the Hawkeyes 20-19.
I had the under on this game.
Upsets
Kind of mad
everywhere.
about it.
Well, so it was 39. What was the line? Over under.
35, I think.
Well, there you go. You were safe.
You can go buy you a shirt now.
A lot of people might make fun of me because I like them smash mouth games. But what people got to remember, you're always more fond of what you grew up on. And what I grew up on in high school was them tough running games. Smack you in the mouth.
Gary,
Running the veer.
If people are making fun of you, Gary, you give me some names. We're gonna get the boys together. We're gonna go.
Here's what we'll do is we'll call our buddy Bart Benton over at Benton and Monroe.
We'll litigate.
Yeah. If you get hurt, be smart. Call Bart.
And I don't think you can make fun of running the veer and low games when you win 5 state championships out of 6 years. Come on now.
But hey, the game does change, and if the game changes for you, you need to reach out to Art Benton. This is a huge Georgia fan. This guy is a new sponsor for the Watch Along show. He has basically jumped on because he grew up with Paul Meharry in Monroe. So he and his dad run a law firm called Benton & Benton. They have, and this is a high-quality law firm, they have recovered $55 million in 2024. We are not done with 2024. They've recovered $55 million. So I'm just saying, if you're injured, be smart, call Bart. If you have a big case with big stakes, be smart, call Bart. He can take care of you. And again, if you reach out to them, it's kind of like what our buddies at Morris and Dean up in Calhoun. You're going to reach, Bart Benton, and he is going to take care of you. He or his dad, either one, they got you covered. So check out Benton & Benton when you get a chance. They're in the Monroe area. Of course, they'll go anywhere in the state, but they're definitely ones to watch.
Here's a question for you. How did South Carolina look so bad against Old Dominion? Likely should have lost that game, and then come out and do this to Kentucky. And subsequently, did Shane Beamer save his job today? Because at the end of the year,
for a week,
that schedule's brutal. But at the end of the year, if this is the difference in being 7th in the SEC, 10th in the SEC, rather than being like 12th, because this is a game that they won, and Sam Pittman's over here losing every game by 2 points every single week. Poor old Sam Pittman, he's in everything. They can play Georgia. That's not true because we saw what happened in Athens. But they could play Texas. They're going to be down by 4 points and have the length of the field to go with 15 seconds left.
I'm sorry. The hottest seed in the SEC right now is still with Florida.
Oh,
yeah, that's
yes.
I need to find a gif of that dog going, "This is fine," with the building on fire. Because
hell, if I wasn't such a big Georgia fan, I could do a better job coaching Florida.
Honestly, I kind of want to bang on Billy Napier just because he can't open a water bottle. But at the same time, man, when you watch some of the boneheaded plays that his guys do, it's easy to blame the coach when your guys can't. When you were pulling, you can't trip the guy in front of you. Just fundamental football, man. You can't trip him. It's like, come on. Anyway, Deion Sanders, NBC, on Nebraska Florida quarterback Dylan Raiola. Apparently says, we're going to get him. So.
Okay, I ain't just tripping on Napier. What their 100 analysts are doing. They got the most analysts in college football. Come on now. What their analysts trying to teach these boys? Not teaching them how to play football, that's for sure.
No, you do. I'm with you, but again, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. If I coach some kids and I'm like, look, I know when we snap the ball, every time you stand the hell up and you put them in the tunnel and you snap the ball, they stand up and they hit their head tang on the pipe, or on the cage. And you're like, why is your helmet hitting the cage every time you stand up? And then you make him run a lap, and then you put him back in the cage, and you hike the ball, and he stands up, and he hits his head. Ting! You're like, I kind of feel that's what Billy Napier is up against. He's like, man, I got some knuckleheads that just won't do it for me.
I know this is the POS, but would y'all mind if I class this up just slightly? Because I had a really cool photo just sent to me from today's Georgia game.
There you go.
And like this means a lot more to media people that interacted with him a lot, but I think he gets raped. Like, this is one of the true Georgia freaking goats in Claude Felton, and he is probably massively uncomfortable with his face being the one on the big screen because that's just who he is.
He's the best in the business, hands down, top to bottom, no questions.
Didn't matter if you were the top person at ESPN and he was talking to you, or if you were the student that came in 2009, in my case, and just like was scared of everything, treated you the exact same.
I've seen him get a job with a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Radi, I got a question from what you're saying. So do you feel that Napier is a great coach for Florida? And just bad talent.
It's not working. It's not working at all. I'm just saying two things I try not to do, Junior. One, second guess offensive play call. We just don't know. And half the time we don't even know what the play call is. And people will bitch about Mike Bobo. Or remember first year Todd Monken, how they went after him. People that gave James Coley 9 types of hell when he had no wide receivers. Every team playing Georgia knew that he couldn't throw the ball because he had no receivers. Like, James Coley's terrible. I'm like, well, hell, if you were one-dimensional, you'd be terrible too. So I don't like to second-guess him because I don't even know what the play call is. We can guess, but Stephen Bennett, going back to Aaron Murray, every quarterback walks up to the line with 2 play calls he can check out of, right? So Georgia call, they run a stupid play. Well, maybe the quarterback changed at the line. We don't always know. So I don't do that. The second thing is I hate to bang on a coach when he has taught the guys how to do it correctly and they still don't do it correctly. And it's the most boring thing when you ask coach, what do you need to do to win? We need to execute. And you're like, oh, come on. It's the stupidest, most cliche thing ever. But
until Brian Kelly screws it up and says it the wrong way.
But you're right.
Okay, I'm going to put it this way.
My guys do what I told them to do. And if they do what I told them to do, at least we will stand a baseline chance of winning. But when you saw the Clemson guys, they pulled the wrong way and their guards met behind the center and slammed into each other. You can't tell me, and again, Matt Luke is a good offensive line coach. Nobody at Georgia liked him. His players hated his guts. But you can't tell me that he coached his offensive linemen to pull in opposite directions, slam into each other, and then not pick up the most dangerous man on the edge and have a 3-yard loss. So that's why I don't second-guess play calling, because we don't always know what's going on, especially when they're like, hey, yeah, we'd love to call this play, but that kid can't catch in practice. Yeah, I know he's a 5-star to you guys, but he can't catch a cold, so we don't throw to him, So again, I don't, Junior, to answer your question, I don't know that he's the right guy there. I always try to give every coach in America the courtesy of knowing that he probably told them what to do, but they couldn't get it done. And then the question is, well, why don't you pull him and put in somebody who can? Well, the guy behind him is probably worse. So I try to give all the coaches a bit of grace because it's like we all think we can do it better than they can.
Okay, I'm going to put it like this right here and sum it all up.
All right.
What I think.
We're ending with Gary's last thought.
Okay. Miami went into the swamp, one of probably the toughest stadiums to play in the whole college football.
Back in the day, yeah.
And made them look like they were playing a Pop Warner team.
Yeah.
And that would not have happened under Steve Spurrier or Urban Meyer. Now tell me it would have.
I
I
agree
don't care
with you,
what players they had.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also, Gary, to be fair, they did have better players.
Yeah. This team is something, is a force to recognize. This team is crazy.
They're paying a guy at quarterback who's making more than some professional QBs.
Yeah, this team is crazy. But speaking of that, is I know there was like the past 2-3 years there was a question about the Florida Georgia line game about being a home game. Has anything moved on that, or is it still going to be like the neutral site?
It will be a neutral site or home and away for 25 and 26 when they remodel that stadium. But then right after that, they're going to come right back to it because again, with what Gary was talking about, getting rid of some of those bad games, or the fact that the playoff expansion was mainly to make money. The people who keep saying, "Well, Kirby doesn't like having the game at the neutral site. Let's go home and away." I get that, but at some point, the fact that the city of Jacksonville will pay you more. Let's say you make $6 million on a home game, and then you go play at Florida and you make zero. So
Yeah.
for 2 years you make $6 million.
Yep.
Let's say the Jacksonville says we'll pay both teams $5 million per year, and so now all of a sudden you've made 10 in 2 years, and you've got to pay your players. So, and the city of Jacksonville is like, hey, this is a $14 million project for us. So if we pay these teams 10, we're still $4 million ahead, and we got the shot in the arm to the city is worth it. Plus, you also have a bunch of big donors. I'm not one of them, but I speak to these folks, and they're like, look, I bought a home in Amelia Island 20 years ago because every Georgia-Florida game we have a family reunion. We go down
at the Jackson,
and we bought. That's our second house. It's there. That's where we go. The rest of the time, we rent that house out. But I've got a $1.3 million house down there that if you move that to home and away, that house is useless to me, and I will stop giving money to the University of Georgia. There's a bunch of bull gators do the exact same thing. So again, if you move it to home and away and make it that way permanently, Georgia has to replicate those donations and that payout somewhere. So that's why I'm like, I predicted 3 years ago, this game is gone. This game is done in Jacksonville. And then the people with money called me up and said, hey, dumbass.
Well, it's that, but it's also just the infrastructure that's being built in Jacksonville, which is long overdue. Remember, they've had an NFL team for all this time, right? And they still bring in seats that they don't normally have in that stadium for Georgia versus Florida. And so if they're going to invest all they're doing to make this spaceship of a stadium, Georgia and Florida is top of mind for that. So that indicates where they view Georgia and Florida being a part of the future there. When they launched the specs of that stadium to give people an idea of what they're working for, they showed Georgia, Florida in there, not just Jacksonville, not just the Jaguars.
You know what? Speaking of that, makes me think of, because me and my girlfriend just had a conversation about the NFL playing in Brazil, and then the week 0 was in Ireland, and I was like, oh yeah, they're going there because they're trying to expand football. They're trying to take it international. So like when you send it, I'm thinking of the same thing. They're trying to show, hey, in Jacksonville, Florida, we can have football and we have football fans, and trying to just get the community. Yeah, so I get that.
Yeah, and
look, I'm from South Georgia too. There's a lot of people down there that like that game is closer than Athens. For the people that have to drive 5 hours to Athens,
yes.
I mean, Gary knows for where he's at. That's
yes, a lot closer to Jacksonville than Athens.
Hey, I get invited to speak at the Jacksonville Bulldog Club every year. I think I'll be speaking. I was told I'd be speaking this year during that particular weekend, which is their biggest meeting. That is one of the most active Bulldog clubs too. And they had Brian Evans go out there and speak to him recently. You remember he's from that area. That is a wild, fantastic club down there. I love speaking to those guys, but you're right. It is a lot of those people. That is the only game they see that year, for the entire season. So again, there are people who this is built into their DNA, and so they're going to do it. And I think there's a good possibility. You know that stadium has the little pool sections.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, one of the guys that one of the pool section was bought out by a Georgia fan, and he had a bunch of Georgia fans in there. He gave me and my buddy tickets, and we watched the game from that pool section. I think this year we are going to auction off all those tickets. I think it seats like 50 people and free food, free drinks. And he's going to give the proceeds to Georgia's NIL. Again, he's a money guy. So he's willing to say, hey, I got the whole suite.
In that section.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't understand, too, Georgia got a lot of fans that lives in Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah. Again, that's what I'm saying.
A lot of my family lives in Jacksonville.
Gary, I speak to Bulldog clubs all over the Southeast. The biggest club I go to is the one in Jacksonville. It is packed. And I get to brag for one thing, Junior. Y'all let me brag on this. In 2021, when I spoke to that club, I told them they were going to win the title. I called it months ahead of time. That's the only people who backed me up and say, well, Radi called it. So.
And you talking $5 million for them to play there. Hell, they may even increase.
Oh, it could be 11. It could be 20. Yeah, I mean, it's through the roof.
And Jacksonville gonna pay for having that game.
Yes.
And it doesn't really make no difference how much the teams want. Jacksonville will keep that game in Jacksonville.
I went into a column years ago when I said this game is moving out of Jacksonville. I write a 3-2-1 column, and the number one part of it is a prediction. I predict that game was moving out. I've had to go back in subsequent years and go, yeah, I've spoken to people down here, and I will be stunned if this game moves out of here permanently. It'll move out for 25 and 26, but that's it.
Hey, Gary,
Yeah, because Jacksonville.
We're going to get ready to wrap this show. So, Gary, I'm going to slide you out of here and get Junior's last word, all right?
All right. Later, guys. Y'all have a good day. Be blessed.
See you, Gary.
Go ahead, Junior. Wrap it up for us.
I was saying Jacksonville is not gonna let that game, because I think Kirby said he wanted to get the game like home and home, and then like someone from Jacksonville came right out and said, no, that's not happening. So I don't think it will happen if Kirby tried to. I think it's gonna be lawsuits and things like that. And honestly, with everything going on with Georgia, I don't think we should be in a lawsuit for a home and home game.
No, we won't be. But here's the thing: a lot of folks, the one that moved. And Junior, this is before your time. You got to understand. I started going to Georgia in 1990.
Okay, I was born in '93.
Yeah, when you talk to anybody in Florida, they would always bring up Florida versus Georgia from 1990 on, basically from the arrival, like Steve Spurrier, and like, we got you for, we're 20-3 or 18-3, whatever it was. It was just awful, ignoring the previous 70 years, of Georgia whooping their ass, just beating them like a baby seal, And so you would think that it started in 1990. So I go to school in 1990. Every time I go down there as a student, Georgia loses. Every time I go down there working to cover the team, they lose. And it just got to where that stadium is in my head. Even as bad as Florida is right now, when I write a prediction for Georgia, Florida this year, I'd be like, okay, Georgia's going to win by 1, even though Georgia's going to blow their doors off, because I was raised on Florida winning that game. So a lot of people were like, we just got to get that, because we became convinced that all the losses were partly on the fact that they get to bus over and Georgia has to fly over. It's closer to them. They've got a built-in advantage. The stadium was built on an ancient Indian burial ground, and it's cursed for Georgia fans. It was just, there's all this feeling about that stadium. But now the fact that Kirby goes down there and wins every year, he's going to go down there and beat him by 20 this year, 25, 30.
Yeah. It might be a 40-point victory this year.
You're going to get to where people are like, we don't need to move that game. Let's go down there and have a few drinks. We're good. We don't need to change anything.
I'm going to wrap with this like kind of random question, but just in the day of college football that was. Who's the best team in the ACC?
Miami.
Who's second?
Clemson.
I got to see Clemson play because it's hard to judge Clemson against Georgia,
Yeah. Hey, look at that
but
first.
My question is Fran Brown in that?
No, not yet.
McCord looked great today.
Give him a couple years. He's a good recruiter. He's a good coach. But I mean, I'm so happy for Fran Brown. Ran into him at a game, and of course he's not here, so I can talk about stuff like this. Ran into him at a football game, and when I would go see like Brian McClendon, I talked to Brian. I covered Brian. Hey, Brian, how's it going? What do you think of this kid? And he'd give me a very, very polite, professional answer. Brian talked to me a lot more. So again, just from a personal interaction point, I'm like, Brian, I like this guy. So I'm kind of rooting for him, just like Sam Pittman. Sam was always so nice. So again, it's completely me-centric. I was like, were you nice to me? But I'm very happy for Fran Brown. And I want, of course, Brian McClendon to do incredibly successful. But when you meet a guy and he helps you do your job better, he gives you a little – of course, it's all off the record. And when met him at a game, and he was so incredibly nice, and he talked and gave us a lot of good insights about the kid that he was recruiting, which made us look good when we talked about the kid that they were recruiting. And to be able to go from a position coach to a head coach for your first job is insane without being a coordinator.
Yep.
Wishing him all the luck. That is a tough job up there, and I hope he really gets it. He was a sponge at UGA. He learned a lot from Kirby Smart. I guarantee you, first thing Kirby did was probably call him up and say congratulations. And you just got to be thrilled for him to get that win. And it's a twofer. He wins, Tech loses. That's a Dan McGill twofer right there, baby.
Junior, appreciate you, buddy.
One thing before I go, I just want to say I feel this is going to be a great year of college football. And then, there's a lot of changes happening, but I feel like with the transfer portal and everything like that, it's actually giving just better competition. As we see today with the upsets that we have going on right now and last week, this is going to be a great year of college football.
I agree 100%, Junior.
And so do the TV executives. They're so happy.
Hey, you see how excited people are for the NFL, too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Football is king. Screw your soccer.
Hey, Paul's back next week, so be sure to tell him that, I did a much better job.
Yeah. Hey, everybody in the comments, Carl, Emery, KC, Jermaine, next week, let's just keep dropping in there. This show's not as good as when Dayne was here. Just like every 3 or 4 minutes, every 10 minutes, we just a show about, hey, the guys love the show. It was better when Dayne was here. Paul will lose his damn mind. Just a freaking theme, just to watch him just get wound up. So you have your assignment, folks. We're going to troll the hell out of Paul. So get on it.
All right, Junior.
Randy, I better see you get in there too. Do the same thing. All right, gentlemen, we got to go. We'll talk to you later.
All right, cool. Radi, we're out of here. Thanks to the Rogue Shop. Thanks to ASW Distillery. Who else did we want to shout out?
Benton out of Monroe.
Benton out of Monroe. They make this show happen. Jermaine says Paul might quit if that happens.
He's so easy to rattle. It'll be fun. Yeah, red and black. Yeah, and the conspiracy. Yes, we're gonna. And again, don't. Hey, just be like, and you guys can agree with each other. But when you see somebody do it, wait about 4 or 5 minutes and do it. Somebody else do it. So it'll be a fun little thing there. Hopefully, he doesn't watch this part of the show.
Hey, night game next week. Get your Hunker bourbon ready for the first night game of the season.
But it's not available till the 21st.
Well, get your Hunker vodka, Roddy, and be ready. If you don't have the Hunker and you got other stuff at your tailgate, you're doing it wrong, is all I'm saying. Yeah. ASW Distillery. Hey, we're going to get out of here. Thanks, boss man, as always. We'll get this up on our audio streams as well. Paul back next week. Night games. A lot of coverage at UGAsports.com. Check it out. Georgia beats Tennessee Tech. On to Kentucky next week. Y'all have a good night.